brothers and sisters and friends, make sure you subscribe to Beacons of Sanctity, the YouTube channel. However, I'm not responsible for their content. Anything good, take it. Anything bad, tell them about it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. All praises for Allah, peace, blessings and salutations be upon his last and final messenger, upon his family, his companions, and all those who follow him up until the day of resurrection. We have our brother Hamza here. We're going to ask him some questions. So, first question. Islamically, how do you define a miracle? And how some atheists, when they claim that you can't use miracles, that miracles aren't proof, how do you respond to that?
Bro, you just put me in the deep end there. How do you define a miracle? Look, I would say a miracle is an event that doesn't have any logical causal connection to where it supposedly came from. Yeah. For example, say the staff of Musa alayhi salam. He throws the staff and it turns into a snake. It was like a big snake, wasn't it? Yeah. It turns to a big snake. We've actually seen what's happened, right? There's the cause, which seemingly is the staff, and there is the effect, which is the snake. But there is no logical causal connection between the two. Because what's in the snake is not what's in the staff. You have to add something else. So from that point of view, there is no naturalistic explanation to explain the event as a result of the perceived cause. That's probably the easiest way of describing what a miracle is. Basically, Allah makes it happen. Right?
How do you respond to atheists who say that that's not admissible as a proof or evidence?
Well, why would they? Well, okay, there are a few things here. Statements of miracle in the Qur'an would not be evidence for the atheist. It wouldn't be evidence for me. I only believe they happen because I believe the Qur'an is from Allah. I agree with them. But it doesn't mean you dismiss miracles because you haven't observed them. But rather, what you should just now do is ask yourself, why is this book from Allah? So we have a lot of evidence why the book is from Allah. For example, it's a linguistic miracle, right? It's linguistic form and genre. You can't find a logical connection between the style or the features of the Arabic language in the Qur'an and the Arabic language. It's as if something else has been added to create the form of the Qur'an, because generally speaking in the Arabic language you have certain forms. You have rhyme prose, which is saj'a, you have straightforward speech, which is mursal, you have, for example, the poetry, which adheres to loosely to 16 rhythmical patterns, or the variants of the 16 rhythmical patterns called al-bihar. Then you have the maqamat, which is a combination of prose and poetry done in a way that's, that's combined. The Quran is very unique, not only from the features of the language, but also because of other aspects like eloquence, etc. And you can't link the features and aspects of the Quranic Arabic with Arabic itself. You may think it came from Arabic, which is true, but there is no logical causal connection with the style of the Quran and Arabic itself, which shows it's a linguistic miracle. Obviously, I've summarized it in a very quick way, but the point is, that's one argument. There are other arguments for the Quran. So if you could prove the Quran is from Allah, if Allah says these miracles happened, then they happened. And they shouldn't question now, but I'm questioning the fact that they happened. Why? Why is it so bizarre that a snake would come from a staff? Why is that so bizarre? You believe human life came from a primordial soup. What's more stupid? Yeah, that's why when some atheists come up to me and say, how can Jesus come from Mary and she was a virgin? I said, well, what's the problem? Life came from life. Is that a problem? Logically, philosophically, is that really a problem that life could come from another life? Yeah, but it's not with the physical process. Yeah, but you believe in something even more stupid, which is conscious life, inner subjective conscious experience. This life itself came from a primordial soup, dead matter. What's worse? Life coming from dead matter or life coming from life? At least be humble enough to say, fine, we can't explain how the virgin birth happened, right? And we believe it's a miracle from Allah, fair enough. But you shouldn't even begin to question it. First question was closer to home. The fact that you believe inner subjective conscious experiences comes from, dead neurochemical, firings in the brain. What I mean by dead is like there's no life behind a neurochemical firing, right? It's an electrochemical activity. There's no real conscious life behind it. But you're saying it's almost identical to inner subjective conscious experience. You believe, what makes us human and the fact that we're alive eventually or fundamentally came from this dead primordial soup. Question those first. Good.
Are
you satisfied?
I'm satisfied.
Good.
Next question is, what do you say is the single most important piece of evidence for the existence of a creator?
Bloody hell. These questions. What is the most conclusive type of evidence for God's existence?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Because I believe in the metaphysic, the first principle of the fitrah, that we have an innate nature and within it contains basic knowledge of Allah's existence and the fact that He deserves praise. And that as human beings develop and get older, the fitrah gets clouded. Then anything can uncloud the fitrah. There is no one argument. Although I am a fan of the argument from contingency, which is a metaphysical argument. You don't need any science. Any science gets absorbed in it. You could use any scientific theory, ones in 50 years to come, or theories that will come in 50 years or 100 years. This argument still absorbs everything because it's metaphysical in nature. It talks about the fact that, there must be a necessary being because everything is contingent, basically. That's the kind of very, very basic essence of the argument. And which is really good because it's adopted by all the schools of theology in Islam.
What's the Islamic view on philosophy?
Depends what you mean by philosophy. If you mean...
What do you understand by it?
Well, philosophy is a broad term. It basically means philosophia in Greek, friend, lover of wisdom. I mean, Allah says we should use hikmah, right? We should love hikmah. Well, there you go, lover of wisdom. You're a philosopher. Now, it depends what you mean by philosophy. If you mean blameworthy ilm al-kalam, which means the type of kalam that adopted assumptions and premises that did not belong in the Qur'an and Sunnah, yes, it's wrong. But anything other than that, if you use an argument that, or articulating Islam or the proof of Islam using assumptions and premises and foundations that can be found in the Qur'an and Sunnah, it's not a problem. And today's philosophy, as we know it, is not just limited to the blameworthy ilm al-kalam. It's not based on a limited Hellenistic medieval thinking. It's bigger than that now.
Give you an example of blameworthy ilm al-kalam.
That's a good question. No one's asked me that before. Okay, an example of blameworthy ilm al-kalam. For example, you have an argument and the premise of your argument is that the universe is eternal. That's, a lot of ulama will say that was kufr. Because Allah says clearly the universe is not eternal. Do you see the point?
Yeah. Okay, what is it about the nature of atheism that has seen so much time and effort being put to tackle it?
Well, you know what, I'm going to be very honest here. And I'm not talking about all atheists. Allah teaches us not to otherize, because Allah says people are not the same. But the new atheists, those who basically jump on the kind of new atheism bandwagon as a movement, the reason we have to address it is because they've made a lot of mess. You know, my son, when he was 2 years old, when he was getting potty trained, he was very quiet in the kids' room one day. And I walked in and he had his nappies down and he pooed all over the floor. It took him about 5 minutes. How long did it take me to clean it up? It took me about an hour. That's what a lot of new atheism has done. They've pooed all over the internet. It took them a limited period of time, and it's taken us all this time to clean it up. And that's just life, bro. And we blame ourselves because we didn't have the necessary mechanism in place to actually, defend Islam and articulate a compassionate, intelligent message for Islam. Now, viewers may think, I still believe you have rights and that you're a human being and that I love you and I will take care of you, I'll give you CPR, I'll buy you food, I'll take care of your family, I'll sacrifice for you, I'll be really nice to you. And I'm not saying it, I know that sounds very cocky and arrogant, but I'm just being honest. I just don't believe it's rational. I don't believe it's coherent. I don't believe it's in line with any reasoning. And it's just couched in intellectual language, but fundamentally it's just a pile of fill in the gap.
Okay, so today there's a lot of characters.
But I have atheist friends, I love atheists. I could believe your ideas are poo, but I could still treat you like my close friend. I give you compassion and love, and that's what I'm about. And I'm willing to change my mind. Let's have a discussion. Let's engage. Let's have coffee.
Today there's a lot of character assassination from the Prophet, and many people allege that he's a false prophet. Also, aside from the growing miracle narrative and so forth, how would you prove that the Prophet was a true prophet? What would you use?
Well, the easiest way of proving that the Prophet ﷺ was a true prophet without using revelation is to look at his life. If you look at the established historical reports concerning his life, you could have a really good argument. And he made a claim to prophethood, which was that the Prophet ﷺ, that he basically said that he is the final prophet. Now, you could assess whether he was lying, whether he was deluded in the claim, whether he was both lying or deluded, or that he was lying just for moral good, so he's not truly lying, he was more for a higher objective, or he was speaking the truth. Now, if you look at the psychological profile based upon the authentic reports in his life, he couldn't be lying, he couldn't be deluded, he couldn't be lying and deluded, he couldn't be lying just for moral gain. Therefore, he must be speaking the truth. That's a really good structure of an argument.
Okay. Usually you find that the image that's drawn by atheists about religion, that it's for superstitious people who just operate off blind faith, as opposed to atheism, which is for sane-minded people who follow proofs and evidences. So how would you say?
Well, it depends what they define as proof and evidence. I mean, some people define proof and evidence as what they just see and feel, which is a not very coherent way of understanding the world. And if they say, I just believe what I see and feel, then you just address that. You show to them how their, epistemology is wrong. The way they come to know things is wrong because X, Y, and Z. It reminds me of a debate I had with Professor Lawrence Krauss many years ago. And I said to him, you have a philosophical presupposition that everything is true based upon what you touch and feel. He said, well, I'm a scientist. And I said, well, there are other sources of knowledge. He said, like what? And I said, like testimony, the say-so of others. And he laughed at me. He said, I just do the science. I said, well, do this science then. I said, do you believe in evolution? He said, yes, of course. I said, have you done all the science yourself? No. And I started to laugh at him because it showed that he had to rely on the say-so of other scientists, which is testimonial, not empirical, which broke down his false assumption that everything that is true must be based on what he has empirically verified. Do you see? Obviously, there's more to it than that, but the point I'm trying to say is, it depends what people consider proof. Sometimes you have to just awaken them to new realities. You have some new atheists, not all atheists, because many academic atheists actually agree with us on many issues, yeah? They agree that science doesn't lead to atheism. They agree that science cannot deny God. But some new atheists, unfortunately, think that science can lead to atheism, which is absurd. Hugh Gulch, who wrote the book Scientific Method in Brief, published by Cambridge, he's a philosopher of science and he's a scientist as well. He basically said to claim that science leads to atheism is to get high marks for enthusiasm and low marks for logic. And that's what he said, because it's true. Because science as a method, if you read the works of Elliot Sober, who's an atheist and a philosopher of biology, philosopher of science, he wrote in his essay called Empiricism that scientists at any moment are restricted to the observations they have at hand. They're limited to their observations. Can you observe God? By definition, God is not observable. He's outside of the universe. Therefore, science as a methodology can't directly deny God's existence. That's it. And what they've done, they've conflated methodological naturalism with philosophical naturalism. Philosophical naturalism is the philosophical worldview, the lenses they put on the eyes to understand phenomenon, reality, which says there's no divine, no supernatural, and that everything can be explained by physical processes. Methodological naturalism is not a philosophical worldview. It merely says that for any scientific conclusion to be scientific, it can't refer to God's existence or divine power, right? So you can be a scientist, adopt a conclusion that never refers to God, because scientific conclusions, for them to be scientific, must adopt methodological naturalism, meaning that they can't refer to God, right? But it doesn't now mean God doesn't exist. It just means scientific conclusions can't refer to God. But what they're thinking now, methodological naturalism is philosophical naturalism, which is the view that God doesn't exist and the divine doesn't exist. No, they're two different things. So they've conflated methodological naturalism and philosophical naturalism. I know these are tough words and there's a lot going on there, but hopefully this inspires you just to read more. And I'm not here to give you full details, it's going to be here all day. Yeah?
Obviously today that you mentioned that if you look back to Lawrence Krauss, some of the leaders today of the new atheist movement, like bringing up Richard Dawkins and Lawrence Krauss and Sam Harris. How do you think the call has affected humanity generally and made it turn them against religion?
Yeah, I mean, I think they oversell their popularity, to be honest, because when I speak to academics and when I speak to just normal people, they will take some things from them and reject others, right? So, it's not as bad as we think, that's for sure. But they are very popular, especially on campus, because, Muslims and people who are religious people growing up on campus, they see these intellectuals, with these books and these narratives, and it sounds so intelligent, and they have all the right letters after their name, so something must be true. And that affects us. And it doesn't affect them intellectually, because even when I go to university campuses, Like in Dundee, University of Dundee, I gave a talk on the argument from consciousness. This is a topic that I specialized for my postgrad on neuroscience and physicalism, and the hard problem of consciousness. I was giving this argument and someone said, oh, you're wrong because Professor Dan Dennett said this. I said, what did he say? I don't know, read his book. That's evangelical, isn't it? He didn't even know what Dan Dennett said. He said, oh, I don't know, just read his book, right? That goes to show that his position is not really intellectual, it's more social, because I mentioned this in the lecture today, that human beings are social, based on, if you study social psychology, based on informational social influence and normative social influence, which basically is the thing that, we have a desire to be certain, and if we're not certain about something, we go to the masses, the collective, and we also have a desire to belong, and even if we have ideas that go against the collective, we'll suspend our ideas just to belong. So that's, a lot of atheism is basically social as well. When I went to Pakistan, I saw Pakistani atheists, It was just a fad for them, smoking a cigarette in a conference, going, I'm an atheist, yeah. And you talk to them about certain concepts, they have no idea. But I don't blame them as well, because if you look at the society of Pakistan, especially for the youth, what do the media do? They give them a false dilemma. They give them some fat, incoherent, unintelligent mufti versus some very handsome, healthy, intelligent, secular guy. And when you're a youth watching this, you have a false dilemma. But there is a middle way. But we haven't shown it to them. So sometimes I don't blame them as well. They're a symptom of a social cause. But, a lot of, and by the way, I may be wrong, but these are my limited experience. I've been to Pakistan twice, to the private universities, traveled to Rawalpindi, Lahore, Islamabad, Faisalabad, the works, And I've seen it. It's a fad. It was so bad that when I was giving a lecture once, some guy stood up, gave me an argument from Dawkins that he misunderstood. And I corrected him, got him to sit down, and I corrected him and said, let me be a better atheist than you. Then I told him what the better atheist response would be, gave an answer to it, then you know what he did? He stood back up and he mentioned exactly the same question. I was like, were you listening? You just don't know what you're talking about. It's just a fad, bro. And a lot of these things are not just intellectual, they're psychological, they're psychodynamic. A lot of these brothers and sisters, they brought up in very dark families, there's no love, no rahmah, no mercy, no sunnah, and they just attach negativity to Islam and their parents. It's all, a lot of it's psychodynamic. Not all of it, but from my experience, especially with the Muslim community, it could be the case. I was in my town and some guy saw my debate and said, oh, well done, you're a good debater, but I'm still an atheist. He was an ex-Muslim. Now I didn't even debate him intellectual stuff. What am I going to do? I asked him, chilling out with him kind of thing, how's your parents? And he stood there telling me about his parental problems. This is a real life example, bro. And I came to the conclusion, and it looked like that he was coming to that conclusion too, that, well, really my kind of rejection of Islam is not because I know Islam. How can I reject something I don't know? It's because I just know what my parents told me and it was just dark and medieval and I didn't like it. And a lot of, that's what happens, isn't it? So, we have to revive the sunnah, mercy, love at home, and also teach people why Allah deserves worship. Islam has become do's and don'ts for people, bro. What did Aisha say about do's and don'ts? Radiallahu anha. She said, if Allah gave us the do's and don'ts in the beginning, we will not listen to Allah. This is Aisha, the mother of the believers. May Allah be pleased with her. She said, but because Allah gave us the framework, the worldview, then when the commands came, we submitted. But when we teach our kids, what do we teach? Just do this. I'm not going to give you why, just do it. And then that's where it turns into a gang. We become into an ethno-religious cult. We don't become Muslims, we have a state of being that is, we're peacefully submitting to Allah as a result of acknowledging that He deserves worship, because we don't know the why behind that. And yet the whole Qur'an was revealed to give us that why, but we ignore that why. As parents, I don't get it. Do you see my point? So we need to revive that at home, inshallah. So we have a lot to do as well. You can't blame all the time. Wallahi, we should not blame. It's not sunnah to blame. If you point the finger, 3 fingers are pointing back. The real enemy is the enemy. This is the way of the Sahaba. They'll blame their sins, blame themselves. But it's very empowering to do so because it means you have now the power to solve the problem. If you blame someone else, then you don't have power anymore. It's all their fault. Okay, how are you going to change it? Or change them? You can't even change yourself. How are you going to change them? Right? But if it's within, Allah says, if you believe and do good deeds, Allah will give you, what He's going to give you, inshallah.
Okay, with regards to the Qur'an, how do you know that it's a unique book in comparison to other books? And how would you prove that it doesn't contain any errors or mistakes? As the Quran claims, it doesn't claim.
You know what? If people want to find errors, they'll find errors. That's a lot of it. You know, I believe the Quran is a mirror, honestly. And the Quran indicates this because the Quran could be a source of someone's misguidance. Why? Because someone's state of being. There are spiritual asbab, there are spiritual causes, isn't there? So if you already want to look for faults and look for falsehood, so-called falsehood, and look for things that are wrong, and you come with a dark character like that, and a dark heart, you're not willing to be open to the truth, that's what you're going to see. The Quran becomes a mirror for you, because the Quran can be a source of your misguidance as well, as Allah says, yeah? Look, the easiest way to prove the Quran, in my view, I know this sounds non-intellectual, but it's really true. If you believe you're sincere, just read the Quran. You become Muslim. And if you didn't become Muslim, I'm sorry, you're not sincere. It's as simple as that. And we should be brave with our narratives like that. If someone's really sincere, wants to love God, and they read the Quran sincerely, with no intellectual emotional baggage, and they approach the Quran will be a mirror for them, and that light will shine through. Inshallah. But yes, we do have arguments for the Quran, why it's from Allah, why it's not free from error, but I don't think we have the time for this. But that principle itself we should start with, because it's very powerful. We give all these abstract arguments, bro, and we're not calling people to the thing that the Anbiya called to, which was to worship Allah. What does worship mean? To know Allah, to love Allah, to obey Allah, and to single out and direct all acts of worship to Allah alone. That's what we should be talking about. We're talking about some random structural feature of the Quran, right? Alright, it's exciting, but that should be used as a means to approach the main essence of the Quran. So, you could teach someone God's existence, the miracle of the Quran, and say, well done, mate, intellectual religion. We're going back to the pub. Yeah? Show them the reality that Allah deserves worship. That's your life now. What is worship? It's profound. Why he deserves worship? He doesn't need worship, but we should worship him. Why? This, that, the other. Talk about these things. This is the essence of Islam. But we end up with these abstract argumentations that, in the grand scheme of things, bro, doesn't lead to anything. I've gone through this journey. Famous story of Razi. You know, Razi comes to a town, all the famous students, Razi, famous scholar. Some old woman says, who's Razi? He says, you don't know Razi? He's the guy who knows 1,000 proofs for the existence of Allah. And she just like almost laughs at him, saying, the one who required 1,000 proofs must have had 1,000 doubts. And I think the later narration talks about Razi saying that we should have the iman of an old woman. And it's true, we're all going to end up as old women, right? Iman-wise, honestly. I feel like an old woman now. You know, started my journey when I became Muslim, pseudo-intellectual wafflings, copying Christians, doing this, falling into mistakes. And then after I realized, subhanAllah, just call people to worship Allah. You know why? Everybody worships anyway, bro. Worship is a natural state of a human being. Even if you're an atheist, even if you're the most hardened atheist, secular, communist type, yeah, whatever. Even if you just hate religion, you think it's the opium of the masses, right? You're in a state of worship. Why? Because you're always going to want to know something the most at any point in time. You're always loving something the most at any point in time. You're always submitting to, you're referring to something the most at any point in time. And you're always directing gratitude towards something the most at any point in time. That's worship. So everyone's in a state of misdirected worship. Our job as Muslims is to compassionately show people this is why you should take that misdirected worship and want to know Allah ultimately the most, and want to love Allah ultimately the most, and want to obey Allah ultimately the most, and want to direct all acts of worship to Allah ultimately the most, right? Well, actually, when it comes to this, all acts of worship have to be directed to Allah the most, right? So from that point of view, just to show them who Allah is. We don't show them who Allah is. Ar-Rahman, Al-Latif, Al-Khaliq, Al-Alim, Al-Hakim, Al-Khallaq, Al-Bar. You know, we don't talk about who Allah is. You know why? Because we have falsely reacted to that movement. We think we have to get an intellectual argument. The problem wasn't intellectual in the first place. It's because they didn't know who Allah was. Now show them. So we have to use that strategy too. Seldom have I met a new Muslim, bro, that came to the deen because of intellectual arguments and stayed because of abstract intellectual arguments. They stayed a bit of both, because it's true, and because it's true from an existential spiritual point of view as well. Honestly.
Yeah. You know something? Okay, last question. Obviously, if you're familiar with the works of Ibn Taymiyyah.
Yes. Well, not all of them.
No, some of them, yeah. So which one do you find most inspirational, or which one do you find most useful, if you like?
For the English audience, I think the most inspirational would be, it's a book that was written by Professor John Hoover, who's a Western expert on Ibn Taymiyyah. He gets some things wrong, but generally speaking, he makes a compilation of so many different things. And the book is called, it's published by Brill, Academic Press, and it's called on Ibn Taymiyyah's Theodicy of Perpetual Optimism. Big word, but it's really good. And I used all of that to do with the argument from the problem of evil, and how Ibn Taymiyyah argues that everything is based on the ultimate divine wisdom and goodness. It's a very powerful argument. And in that book, he talks about other things like perpetual optimism, which I don't agree with, but it's a really interesting book to see some of the insights of Ibn Taymiyyah. Absolutely. And a lot of the stuff on his fitrah was absolutely genius. Genius. Epistemologically, it makes so much sense from an Islamic point of view. That you start with knowledge, you don't start with a blank slate in doubt. So you have a fitrah that has some proto-knowledge, primary knowledge, like knowledge of Allah's existence, the fact that He deserves praise. Maybe not necessarily worship, but at least praise. Because the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, when they were at Fajr time, listening to the adhan, if the adhan was playing, or not playing, but the adhan was being recited in nearby towns, when the mu'adhin was basically saying, Allahu Akbar, the Prophet said, this is fitrah. And when it continued, the Prophet said, this is Islam. So what's the takbir? It's a praise of Allah, isn't it? So you can do a tadabbur here. I'm not saying this is 100%, but that the fitrah contains within it the affinity to praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And praising Allah, being grateful to Allah, is a key to worship anyway. We see this in the first line of the summary of the whole of the Qur'an, which is Surah Al-Fatiha. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All perfect gratitude and praise belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So praise, gratitude is a key to worship Allah. So there's the fitrah. So the fitrah gets clouded. And rational arguments can awaken, uncloud the fitrah for the truth to shine through, to awaken the truth within. But rational arguments are not ends in themselves. They're just means, and they may not work. Something else might work, like a spiritual experience, or me, good Muslim, or just reflecting and doing tadabbur, so many different things. So his view on the fitrah was phenomenal, and many others adopted it as well. There's some similarities, Al-Ghazali and others, but that focus of the fitrah is powerful, because everything has first principles. There's no such thing as philosophy-free worldviews. Everything has assumptions of first principles, even science. So the point is, the fitrah is our first principle, and then we understand everything, from that point of view. The Tao makes sense. The fact that Allah guides makes sense. It's not your rational argument. You don't know what's going to uncloud the fitrah. Allah knows, right? So you may have to change your strategies. And the fact that truth makes sense, the concept of yaqeen in Islam, haqq al-yaqeen, ilm al-yaqeen, ayn al-yaqeen. We have grades of certainty, right? Certainty, how do you become certain? Is it just a mind thing, like a functional computerized model, a deductive argument? No, certainty is here, not here. The aql is a function of the heart, and the brain is a tool for it, right? So what's yaqeen? Well, it's almost awakening the fitrah from that point of view. That to be certain about something, you must have always been there in the first place. But if you start with doubt, nothing, you're going to end up with nothing anyway, generally speaking. You won't grow in your knowledge from a certain point of view. But if you start with a solid, self-evident, non-negotiable first principle that is true, then truth will follow. So all these things make sense. I know this is very quick, but the point is get people to read more and encourage them to think about these things.
And same thing, you guys? Okay, when you give a shout out to my channel, we can